Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast. I am your host, Tom Nixon. My guest this week is Joan Schoettler. Joan is the author of 4 picture books, Good Fortune in a Wrapping Cloth, Ruth Asawa, A Sculpting Life, A Home for George, and her recent Books Travel the World. Her debut middle-grade verse novel, The Honey Jar, An Armenian's Escape to Freedom, received the Commonwealth California Book of the Year Gold Medal Award for Juvenile Books in 2024. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here on the podcast, and so thank you for having me. I look forward to sharing my writing journey.
Absolutely. So why don't we start with sort of the beginning? Why don't you talk a little bit about your career trajectory?
All right. So I started as an elementary school teacher, and I love that. I found that the 2 areas of curriculum that I was drawn to was art and children's literature. And I decided instead of teaching across the curriculum, I wanted to focus on just one thing. So it was a hard decision between the 2, but I decided to go with children's literature, and that was a fabulous decision for me. From there, I went and received a master's at Fresno Pacific in reading and writing, and went on to teach both at Fresno Unified as in elementary school with a special program where I went in and used literature and writing with children, and also teaching at the university where I would use both the work I had done with the children in school to showing the college students ways to use literature in the classroom. And then at one point, I was sort of challenged by Patricia Polacco, who's a very well-known children's author, and I asked her where all of her stories came from, and she pointed her finger to me and she said, "Well, Joan, they're inside, and they're inside you too." And I thought, well, she's just saying that to be nice. And she said, "They really are. You need to take time to let them out." Shortly after that, a 3rd grade boy who I was working with writing, and I expected them to write every day and share something. And he said, "Well, Mrs. Schoettler," he said, "you're never writing anything. I think you need to write something." And about that same time, Arnie Nixon, who's was a very well-known children's lecturer here on a specialist in children's literature, he died. And that was the first time I sat down and I wrote a story about a storyteller. And then my journey went from there. So that's how I began.
I should tell the listening audience, Arnie Nixon, not my long-lost cousin, at least as far as we were able to figure out, but well-known in Fresno circles for sure. Mm-hmm. Your latest book, Books Travel the World. What can you tell us about that?
This is a picture book that is published by Bushel and Peck, and I was first inspired for this story by reading a book it's called My Library is a Camel. And I thought, well, how interesting. It took place in Kenya. And I thought I wonder if there are other librarians, other ways that people are trying to get books into the hands of in remote places of the world. And so I started doing research, and I found that donkeys and elephants and camels and boats were all different venues that dedicated librarians or dedicated people who wanted to get books into the hands of children used to deliver the books to children. And I just thought I wanted to make sure that children all over the world would understand the dedication that librarians have. And I think that these particular librarians that I researched, and I certainly did not get all of the ones I researched in this book, but it definitely demonstrates the love and desire and passion that these librarians have to get books into the hands of children. So that was sort of the beginning. It's interesting from there. So after the book was published, and in between that time, I had the opportunity to connect with probably just 2 of the librarians. And after the book came out, one of the librarians sent me a schedule of the boat that she uses in case I'd want to visit someday. Another librarian wanted to know if I just told him about the book, and he hoped that his donkeys would be in the story. And another man from Germany who worked also in Africa in a bookmobile, he said that he contacted me and he had written a book also about librarians getting books into the hands of children. So it's really fun to see the connections that you have as you do research and as your book comes out, the importance of that.
What a lovely story. I see periodically on Facebook and other social media this guy who has, it's like a motorcycle, but it has a huge library
Oh,
on the back. And I kept saying that's
yes.
my retirement job if I could ever figure it out.
Well, I kind of think this feels like part of my job. When I look at my trajectory of my life's work in terms of making that decision to study children's literature and being able to go into the classrooms and to share books the way all librarians, those passionate people who want to get books into the hands of children, how they do that. And I feel this book has sort of come full circle for me because it's not only sharing the story, but it's sharing the importance that I've had in my life in getting books into the hands of children. And I knew that I wanted to dedicate this book to librarians. And I first started to write dedication to librarians. I thought, no, that's not enough. It has to be more. And so I wrote sort of a little reflection on why it's so important for me to dedicate to librarians and to thank them for all the ways that they have interacted with children and books to excite children about reading, whether it's in a library in Fresno or throughout the state, country, and world.
Wow, I love that. What motivates you as a writer? What drives your stories?
Curiosity. I
Mm.
think that would probably be the main word. I love going to museums, and museums have inspired a number of my stories. I love gardens and nature, and I have some other manuscripts that are set in national parks or in parks in other parts of the world and country. And so that curiosity I would say, is the main thing. That, and I just have a story. Stories are waiting to be told. And I
Mm.
think, most writers would say that they have something in them that wants them to share a story that they're researching or thinking about. So
What is your writing process like?
it probably varies sort of day by day. I try to write every day, and whether it's
Mm.
spending an hour writing or a longer time on the actual writing part, Monday through Friday. And then it always overflows because within that, there's the research. And I love researching the topics for the books that I write. And that research can take so much time. And the actual information that I'll put into a book might be 10% of the research that I do,
Mm.
because I need to make sure that I understand the history of what's going on and who's involved and looking at the characterization. So it's really a deep dive into the research. So that research part is important. Then there's the writing, which I love. And I've been in a writing group for 20 years, and
Oh,
we
wow.
meet weekly, almost weekly for that entire time. So we are constantly sharing, and I'm learning always from them. It's a wonderful group, and I really recommend anyone who writes to get into a writing group. And then, of course, it's the marketing piece. So, that also plays a very important part in the writing process. So,
I I am constantly amazed because I've talked to so many writers over the years and how so many don't realize that that's part of their job too. There may be someone at your publisher that's doing that for you, maybe,
right.
but if you want to sell books, and that's sort of the name of the game,
It
you
really
have to
is.
take some
Yeah,
of that on.
definitely. And I don't, Uh, I just find that with each book, something else rolls out in terms of the ability to get your book out into the marketplace and out to the greater world. And that's really an important piece.
Tell us what you're working on now.
I have three things I'm working on now. One is I'm doing a revision on a middle grade novel. When The Honey Jar came out 2 years ago, I always thought of myself first as only writing picture books. And a number of years ago, I was read a picture book, a manuscript, to one of my friends in my writing group. And she said, "Joan, this really needs to be a middle grade novel." And you need to write, there's so much to tell in the story. And I said, I don't have that many words in me. I can't write a middle grade novel. Well, I did. And when I submitted that, I submitted it to the Jewish organization that gave an award for the book. And I was really surprised. But then I wrote a couple of other middle grade novels, but I never put them out there. They just sort of were a lot of time that I put into it. And then when the Honey Jar came out and I received that award, and a number of people said, Joan, you really should be writing middle grade. So I went back to one of the middle grade novels that I had started, and I'm changing it in the sense that it was in prose. I'm writing it in verse, and I'm bringing it up. I probably wrote it 8 years ago. I'm bringing it up to date more in terms of what's going on today. So that's probably one of my major projects. I have about 3 picture books that I'm trying to get out into the world. So that submission process, both with an agent and doing some of it on my own. There's that piece. And then there's a picture book that I've been inspired to. I took a trip to Guatemala recently, and I just fell in love with that culture. And my brother-in-law is Maya from Guatemala. So just his influence in my life over the years. And I just am sort of dipping my finger into looking at some of those things too.
So of all of this that you're talking about, what's coming out in 2026 we can be looking forward to?
There's a great book by Beach Lane. It is called A Doctor at Heart, an educator and scientist, Vivien Thomas. So Vivien Thomas was a Black man who wanted to go to college and wanted to become a doctor. That was his goal. And it happened at the same time. He'd been saving money for college. The crash of 29 came. He lost all of his money, and he had been working with his father in carpentry. There was a real downslide in that. So he was looking for work, and he asked a friend about if there was any job at Vanderbilt College or university where this man was working. He said, well, there's a doctor there that is looking for a lab assistant. And so Vivien applied. And then the doctor was Dr. Blaylock, who was a heart specialist. And they worked together for probably 40 years. But during that time, there was a doctor who came to them and wanted a surgical procedure that could cure blue babies. And those are children who don't have enough oxygen in their blood. Mm-hmm. And so they actually turn in a bluish color. So Vivien and Dr. Blaylock worked together on that. And so that's what Vivien, and sort of his main piece, along with after that, he continued training some of the top heart surgeons, Black heart surgeons at that time. So that's his story. And it's coming out
a great story.
May 12th in 2026.
Oh, wonderful.
So, yeah.
Do you do many presentations at schools, libraries, anything like that?
I do. With my first 2 books dealt with art and artists. So I did a number of presentations at the De Young Museum, the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, the Asian Museum in Pasadena. And I have had opportunities to present with groups of librarians. And I love doing that because they're the ones who are getting the books into the hands of the children too. And I also have done school visits and a number of school visits. And it's that time when you interact and you see your story going forward and you hear the questions and opportunities. When I do school visits for children, in classrooms, those have mainly been the ones on art. And with that, I'm always wanting to include an art activity that the children can connect with, maybe something that the artist who I wrote about is sharing. And so that's been really great too. And actually for the books travel the world, I was trying to come up with an art idea. And I thought, well, we're looking at travel, we're looking around the world. So I have the children, when I go into the classrooms for them, I give them a blank postcard, and I want them to write the name of their favorite book and then either draw a picture of the character, a setting, just something that inspired them on one side. And then on the other side, there are the 3 lines, and they can address it to the country that they would like it to go to. And then they write a little note to the person who'd be receiving it. So, dear reader, dear friend, dear
Mm-hmm.
student. And it's just, I love the comments that they make. And then up to this point, we've been able to bundle those up. And when my publisher sent the books off to the different librarians throughout the world, the children had little postcards from the children. The children of the other countries had postcards from children in the United States. So
Oh, nice.
I'm always trying to look at that connection between story and listener and yeah, the book.
Do you go to any of the library conferences, CSLA, ALA?
I've been going to ALA, actually all of those, ALA the last 2 years have gone, and they've both been times that I've been citing books there. So that's great. I love
Nice.
ALA. I also am involved in USBBY. It's the United States Board on Books for Youth. And that was an organization that was started by Ella Lepman after World War II. And she was a woman who fled from Germany and went to England during the war. And she was very well known for her work with children in books. And the German Organization for Children came to her and said, what can we do for children? We need to do something besides providing the food, clothing, and shelter that they have. And she said books. So she put a call out to children throughout the world to send books for the children in Germany. And she collected 4,000 books in a very short period of time for the children in Germany. So I think her influence on my life, the interest that I have in USBBY has also influenced. I think it all ties into the story of books travel the world, librarians travel the world. We need to have literacy throughout our world.
Is there a book or a series of books from your childhood that still resonates with you?
It's interesting when I think back on that. There are probably a few, but one of the books that I reflected on when I was young, we did not have a lot of books in our home when I was young. The money wasn't there for it, but there was the library. But I did have one book that I had. It was called Read Me Another Story. And it was a little chapter book and there were all these stories in it. So my mother would read these to me. And I can remember always saying, like, read me another story. So when I wrote this Books Travel the World, I wanted to tie something in. And so at the end of each double page spread, where each is dedicated to a different country, I have the children saying, one more story, please. So that really wasn't a conscious piece. It wasn't until after I put that in the book that I realized I was saying that to my mother when she was reading before I was a reader. And of course, when I stepped into reading, I loved books like 100 Dresses. I loved just so many of the picture books that I think of that shared the importance of literacy and growing with children and growing with books. So
Nice. What are you reading now?
I just am reading a great book called Frozen River. That's for an adult, so I just have to put that in because it's a great story. In terms of children's books, I have a selection of books. One is called Maybe. A number of them are picture books, and I find right now I'm sort of in this quiet stage. I'm looking for books that are maybe more poetic and creative in a different. It's just sort of touching who I am. Read a number of books by Pam Munoz-Ryan recently. When I find an author, I just tend to read quite a few of their books. Margarita Engel is also, her books of prose, and of course her picture books are wonderful too. So all of those are books that I'm reading.
Oh, I'm a big fan of Margarita Engel. For those
Yes,
who don't know, she's local for both of us.
Yes,
and
yes,
she's wonderful.
Yes, if you're not familiar with her, you can start with her picture books or step into any of her middle grade novels. Or young adult novels. They're really great.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Joan, for coming on the Book Flood podcast. For our listeners and watchers, a reminder to like, subscribe, and share. We are at all the places, YouTube and Spotify, Apple. You can find us there. Again, Joan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Tom. It was really great. Take care and read well and often. Thank you.
Thank you.